तो अभी मत करो स्टार्ट।
You might have to go to the room. I have a webinar.
All right, we will begin now. Welcome everybody to Friday Forenoon with Entrepreneur. Hope you all are safe and are following the right steps and precautions to keep yourself and others safe during these challenging times. Today, we have a special announcement. This webinar is being attended for the first time by the incoming batch of MBA at BML Munjal University. We welcome all the students of this batch to the university and also to this webinar. The university has been striving to encourage entrepreneurship amongst the students. Many of our graduates from the university have chosen to become entrepreneurs instead of picking up regular assignments with other companies. They are acting as motivation not for just themselves and their team people, but also are motivating many of the current students to pursue the path of entrepreneurship. This series of Friday Forenoon Entrepreneurs is being presented by Propel, the incubator at BML Munjal University. The intent of the series Today, we have with us Mr. Rahul Vital, digital entrepreneur. He started his career with Expedia in the US. Then in mid-2000, he shifted back to India and he was a core member of the MakeMyTrip.com team. They got this venture off the ground at that point in time. He had subsequently co-founded Truly Madly, India's largest matchmaking app. His time is called Vital, in which he's trying. I would suggest and invite everybody to visit vital.in. It's worth the while for all of us to take a look at it, and it offers some fantastic products and offerings which would help us take care of our health needs in a very, very value manner. Rahul comes with a lot of experience in digital marketing, and he has a lot of passion to interact with students and help them really in their path of entrepreneurship. Rahul, welcome so much to this FFE Friday Forenoon with Entrepreneurs, this session. We are very sure that like in past, when you have come to university, students have been enthused, and today it will be no exception. And we would like you to share your journey and especially your thoughts about product market fit and how it is important. Before I hand over to Rahul, I would request everybody to keep their mics on silent. There is a question answer tab at the bottom. You could put in your queries and questions in that. Once Rahul finishes his talk, we would be taking up the questions and we will be discussing those questions and answers with you. Over to you, Rahul.
Okay, thanks, Devinder. Hi guys, welcome, and a great initiative by the university, bringing in all the entrepreneurs to share their learnings. And I think the feedback you get from real life examples, I think are very, very valuable. So I'm going to start sharing a presentation, and I'm going to kind of switch off my video so that you can concentrate on the presentation. Just give me one sec.
Rahul, you can keep your video on because
it's my network, right?
Okay.
You know, I just want to make sure that you know, that doesn't keep going away in between.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Can everyone see this? Devinder, is my screen shared?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, your screen is visible.
Great. So guys, today we talk about reaching product market fit. And I think for a startup, you know, I think it's the most important milestone. You know, pretty much, you know, critical for survival. You know, I'll share my learnings having worked in multiple startups on, you know, what it takes to get to a product market fit. When do you really know that you've got a product market fit? So about me, like Devinder said, I've been a product manager all my life. Actually started my career with Expedia, then came back to India and was the core part of, it was part of the core team at MakeMyTrip.com. Then I co-founded Truly Madly, and now I'm on my latest venture called Vital. So I'll take you through the journey, a typical journey of a startup to reach product market fit, and what are basically the learnings. And I'll share kind of examples from you know, Truly Madly and Vital, which are the two most recent startups I've worked on. So let's get going. Just a second. So what is product market fit, right? And what does it mean? So product market fit is when people who know they want your product are happy with what you're offering. That is a product market fit, right? You know, it's very important for you to kind of understand and realize that, you know, when do you achieve that product market fit? So let's start with a typical startup journey, right? How will it look like? So, you know, you will have a problem, you know, you've thought about a solution and you want to try out that solution, right? That's what a typical kind of, that's how you start. So I'm not going to get into, you know, how you've identified the problem, the solution and all those things. I'm assuming that you understand that there is a problem, you have a solution and you want to try it out. Now, typically, this is how a solution will look like, right? It will be a bunch of features which you kind of think make up your solution, and you know, want to build all of them and try them out. But here is what will happen, right? So then there's a reality check, right? As a startup, you are always short of resources and time, right? So probably it is going to be you, your co-founder and a couple of team members. And then, you know, you don't have a lot of time to try it out because guess what? There are other people also thinking about this problem, right? And maybe have a solution, maybe a better solution, right? So that's the reality, right? You want to build everything, but you just don't have the time and the resources. And this is what I've seen. So I advise a lot of startups, I advise a lot of entrepreneurs. And this is where I see most of them kind of fall through. You know, they have this idea of a grand kind of a product, you know, which will solve every problem they've thought about. But then they kind of, you know, start building everything out and realize that, you know, they can't build everything. So here is what you really need to do, right? And I think this is the very basis or basic of product management, but I can't stress how important this is. And it is very simple, but it gets missed out. And that's where, you know, most of the founders I've seen, or most of the startups I've seen, start kind of losing their track. So what you really need to do is really stack rank all those features you've kind of thought through, right? And say, what are the absolutely most important features you need for your solution to work, right? And, you know, initially when you start off, you will think that, hey, listen, I need all those features. But when you start thinking and start speaking to your potential consumers and users and kind of doing your market research, it really boils down to those top 2-3 features which are absolutely most important, and the rest of them kind of start going down to nice to have, right? So the first thing you should do, when you start building a product, is actually stack rank all the features which you have, from ones which are absolutely needed to the nice to haves. And the way to do this is kind of speak to your potential consumers, right? Do your market research. Understand what are the things which your consumers would really want, right? As the must-haves. And what are the things which are going to be nice to have, right? Which you can probably build later once the core hypothesis of your solution is proven, right? And that's when you come to a minimum viable product, right? So what's a minimum viable product? So minimum viable product is a set of very, very basic features which you need in your product to test the product, right? So this is like, so if you have a problem, what are those absolute must-have small set of features you need to test your solution, right? And now I'm going to take you through Truly Madly and Vital and kind of tell you, how we came up with our MVP. And, for Truly Madly, it's been a journey of almost 6-7 years now, and how has it evolved. Vital, we are still very young. It's only 6 months. So we are still in our MVP stage. But it's going to be interesting for you guys to see, the thought process of kind of getting to an MVP. So Truly Madly, right? So it's an online matchmaking app for the millennials. And when we started this back in 2012. It was me, my co-founders, and a very small team of 2 developers. So we are just 5 of us. And the problem we wanted to solve was that we thought that, the existing online matchmaking platforms weren't just kind of cutting it for the millennials. And the problem was from our own experiences as well as from experiences of people we knew, right? Every single person we spoke to was confused and was kind of frustrated with the experience. And then we thought, hey, listen, this is a pretty big enough market to crack. So why don't we kind of reinvent online dating, online matchmaking? And when we started off, the problems we identified or the features we identified, there were a bunch of them actually. But what were the challenges? So we said the challenges are, hey, listen, one is that, the profiles on these matchmaking platforms are not verified, right? So that was a big concern. Second was that there was no matching really, right? So what people had to do was that they feed in their kind of search criteria, and they see a big list of profiles, could go up till thousands of profiles, right? And they have to decide, which one do they have to communicate with. There were no privacy controls, right? So especially for girls, it was a big issue because, their profile was pretty much available for anyone to see. And they didn't want that. Right? And third, and the fourth was that, this was the millennials were used to kind of, the WhatsApps and the Facebook messengers and instant chatting and messaging and all these online matchmaking systems like Shadi and Bharat Matrimony and whatnot was still working on those archaic emails, right? So you kind of, you show your interest, but you hear back from your prospective match after maybe a week, right? And people like, that's really frustrating. So we said, hey, listen, we need to reinvent online matchmaking. And, we need to build all these different features up. We have verified profiles, we have compatibility matching, we want to have instant chatting, we want to have security and privacy controls, we want to engage users through different quizzes and games and whatnot. So there was a huge laundry list of features we wanted to build, right? But guess what? Again, as I said, we're just 5 of us. If we were to build all of that and kind of start working, it would have taken us probably maybe 1 year to 2 years to build the complete product. And we just didn't have time, right? Because we wanted to quickly kind of test out the product in the market. So we said, let's kind of understand from our users, again, potential users, like what are the core features they are absolutely would want in a new online matchmaking platform. What are their main pain points when it comes to the current kind of solutions out there in the market. And when we start speaking to people, users, we start kind of doing our market kind of research and surveys. What we realized that the number one problem people had was that the profiles were not verified. And they didn't know whom they were talking to, whom were they chatting to, and that was one of the biggest concerns. Second, what we realized was that the experience was really frustrating because there was no matching, right? So you kind of feed in your height, your age, your kind of religion and whatnot, and you get maybe thousands of profiles, right? And like the question is that how does one kind of go through those 1,000 profiles and figure out who's going to be the most appropriate match. Third was that obviously, so that those were like the top two concerns. Obviously, those concerns around privacy and security, and then obviously need for kind of instant engagement. But when we kind of stack ranked our features, we realized, that verified profiles is right at the top. Then was compatibility matching, some kind of matching. And then came all these other features. So we said, hey, listen, what we need to do then for our MVP is focus on kind of making sure that each and every profile is verified and do some kind of recommendation, right? And it could be a very, very basic recommendation, which doesn't need kind of, a lot of effort to start with, right? So I'll show you. This was how Truly Madly looked when we started, right? So it was, we just kind of focused on two things. One was verifying each and every profile and doing some kind of matching. And it was a very, very basic matching. There was no kind of, machine learning and data mining and all those kind of fancy things, because we just wanted to kind of test our hypotheses, right? So if you see, we had a trust score, which was basically to what extent is a profile verified. And we had a set of curated matches, which you would send every day. So we started off by sending 3 matches every day to our members, and they will only get to see 3 matches, right? And we did some very basic matching on, the interest, the education, again, very, very cursory, without putting much effort, right? All a person could do was hide or like someone, and if the other person also kind of likes that match, then there is that profile, then there's a match. And this was before Tinders and your Bumbles and your Hinges, by the way, right? So I'm talking about 2012. And this took us like maybe a month and a half for us to build and kind of test it out. So that is how we kind of got to an MVP for Truly Madly. I will show you now Truly Madly now. This is how Truly Madly looks now. So if you see, once you're through your product market fit, then you start putting layers, right? And if you see here, now, you have a much deeper, richer profile. You have instant chat. You have different ways of communicating with this member. You have, security and privacy controls. So all that kind of got built much later, as part of evolution of the product. But to get to your PMF, you have to have the very, very basic stuff to make sure, that your initial hypothesis is actually working. Because without that, no matter how many layers you work, the product is not going to survive. Now let's come to Vital, right, which is my latest venture. So in Vital, we are trying to build a health benefits platform for self-employed individuals and small companies. And the main kind of problem we are trying to solve here is that if you're part of a big corporate or a company, you get all kind of health benefits. You get really affordable insurance. You get all kinds of OPD benefits, wellness benefits, and whatnot. But when it comes to small companies like startups and maybe individuals, self-employed people, there aren't really any health benefits, right? You have to buy your own insurance. If you're fortunate enough, you'll get discounts from some healthcare providers, who like you. But really there are no health benefits, right? If you're a small company or you are an individual. And our problem, the problem we were trying to solve is that, hey, why can't we offer better benefits even to smaller companies and to individuals who are not part, who don't belong to a big corporation, right? And build a digital solution again for kind of giving these benefits. So when we started kind of doing our market research, again, so we had what could those benefits be, and we thought about, again, there was a big laundry list, right? So there was affordable insurance. There is a health marketplace you wanted to build, which had exclusive packages and discounts from health and wellness vendors. Build medical loans for treatments which are not covered by insurance, right? Provide a service for giving medical advice, right? And there were a bunch of other stuff we wanted to build in this health benefits platform. But we realized, right, if you, again, when we started, we still are a very small team. We are a team of 10, 15 people, and if you want to build all these things from day one, it's like, again, it would have taken us maybe 2 years to build it, right? So we're like, again, what are those core features or core kind of things which our target audience would want, right? And what is the main pain point these guys are facing, right? So what we realized is, hey, listen, the topmost kind of need was that, can we get insurance which is affordable? Right? Because, so I don't know if you guys know, but if you belong to a big corporate, right, the corporate sponsors your insurance, and the insurance is probably 70%, 60% cheaper than what you would get if you were to buy it yourself from the market. So the topmost kind of requirement which came out was that, hey, listen, I want affordable insurance. Can you kind of offer me affordable health insurance? So we said, okay. Then the requirement was, what about all the expenses which are not covered by health insurance, like your dental, your maternity, your OPDs and whatnot. Again, if you're part of a big corporate, 90% maternity will be covered and you will get some OPD benefits. But if you're not part of a big corporate, you won't get any of those benefits. So can we get that, right? And then there were requirements. Okay, fine. There are certain treatments which are not covered by insurance. So can I get medical loans for it? Then there was some medical advice. Okay, fine. It's a great feature to have, but will I really buy your product for kind of providing me medical advice? Maybe not, right? So I think what we did was we stack ranked and said, what are those absolute features which people are going to pay for? Must-have features which people are going to pay for, which are required to again test our hypotheses, right? So we stack rank them, and the first topmost was insurance, then marketplace, medical loans, medical advice, and then there is a big laundry list, right? So this is what Vital looks like right now, right? So we started off by only doing insurance and some part of the marketplace, right? Because again, we don't have the resources all the time right now to build the entire marketplace. The thought is that, hey, let's first kind of crack insurance. Let's get some engagement on our marketplace, and then let's kind of start putting layers on it. So right now, Vital is basically insurance, a very, very kind of thin marketplace, which you're building every day to kind of get more services. But that's what Vital is, right? We haven't even touched any other parts of the product right now. And this itself took us, by the way, 6 months to develop. It's not easy. So what one thing you'll always kind of realize, or once you go through the cycle, you will kind of learn is that, let's say you projected it's going to take a month or 2 months for you to build something. It's always going to be 3x. That 2 months is always going to become 6 months. So when you start off, kind of always buffer for how much time you're going to take to develop. So that's how we started Vital. And to get to the MVP again, you have to be careful and smart in deciding what you want to build and how you want to build. Because again, as a startup and to get to product market fit, what you want to really do is kind of build fast, iterate over it, and kind of test out your assumptions, right? So what we did with Vital is that, we didn't even build a native app. we just built a web app, because then we could try it out on both Android and iOS, right? With just one development cycle. And frankly, we didn't even have developers with skill sets of making a native app, and it just didn't make sense to hire them. So we had no native app, very, very basic flows, and only insurance and a very thin marketplace. Again, 6 months to develop, and kind of test it out. So that's how you need to be kind of working through, when you start kind of, you start working on a startup. Now it's important. So let's say you have your MVP, right? So let's say you've gone through your set of features, you've kind of refined them, you know what you want to build for your MVP. Now you want to validate your product, right? And make sure that you kind of there are no bugs. There are kind of you have kind of gone through some of the main user flows and kind of getting feedback and kind of insights. And the best way to do it is with a very small set of potential consumers, right? And those could be your friends and family, could be users from your market research group, or maybe a TG, which is very easily approachable, right? So in Truly Madly, what we did was that, so we built our MVP, and we went to all our single friends, right? And we were pretty much all single at that point of time, so we all had single friends. And then through their Facebook, then we went to their single friends, right? And said, hey, we have a really cool new online matchmaking product. Why don't you guys try it out? For Vital, we said, hey, listen, let's go to all our friends and startups, because they don't have any health benefits, right? And kind of give them this health benefits platform and say, hey, listen, now you can enjoy all the benefits you would have were you employed in a Google or an Amazon or a Price Water, right? So in Truly Madly, we went to our single friends and kind of their single friends. We had almost maybe 200, 300 odd kind of members on day one, kind of using and trying out a product, right? In Vital, we went to our friends and startups and, had almost kind of 100 odd members, employees trying out our product. And this is your first set of feedback which is going to come in, right? And super important to kind of take this feedback because that is going to be your first kind of insights into your, solution you're kind of trying to kind of market and build and scale. So kind of do that. It's super important. Get your, so this is what I call the alpha release, right? Where you're trying it out with a very, very small set of potential consumers to kind of get, are they kind of really understanding the product? Are they understanding the communication? Is everything working, right? And, is your solution even solving the problem you had kind of thought it would solve? So do this exercise, right? And this should be a month-long exercise where you're kind of getting all this feedback, iterating over the product and stabilizing it. Once you do that, then you are kind of ready to kind of market it to a wider audience, right? Now you want to kind of, so you've done your alpha release, you've got a bunch of feedback, you've kind of plugged in all the bugs, the loopholes, you've kind of, worked through the communication, you've worked through whatever blind spots there were, which you hadn't seen. And now you say, okay, now I want to try it out on a wider audience. This is what I call the beta kind of release, right? I want to kind of reach out to maybe, so you started off with maybe 100, 200 odd consumers. Now you want to reach out to maybe thousands of them, right? And that's when reality check 2 hits you, right? You have no money to spend on marketing, right? So as a startup, you're in catch-22, right? Unless you have proven your product, no one is going to give you money, right? It's very tough to raise money. And to kind of prove your product or get to product market fit, you need to test out your product on a bunch of users. And guess what? You don't have money, right? And that's what happened in Make My Trip. That's what happened in Truly Madly. And that's what's happening in Vital, right? We haven't raised any institutional money. We are kind of bootstrapping it. We are still kind of in our MVP stage. And here is where, again, most of the startups I kind of work with, this is where they all get stuck. They're like, I have my MVP. I think, the initial set of users kind of love it. They love the product. But now how do I market it? How do I distribute it to a wider audience, right? And I don't have money. I can't spend on customer acquisition. And that's where, the second thing comes, which is growth hacks, right? You have to figure out cheaper ways to reach out to your TG, right? You don't have the luxury of a big organization which can spend millions of dollars in kind of acquiring customers. You have to identify channels on which you can piggyback, right, without any cost. You have to figure out alliances and partnerships, right? And that's the only way to get your initial set of large customers, right, large consumers, before you can actually raise money and start spending on acquisition, right? And that will come much later. Once you can raise institutional money or you can raise money from investors, because all of them would want to see some proof of concept, right? All of them would want to see, are consumers even kind of taking your product? Are they even paying for the services, right? And here, without money, again, you'll have to figure out growth hacks. And that's the only way to do it. So here is what we did at Truly Madly, right? Again, it was a bootstrap kind of venture. We had so we got our first MVP. We kind of refined it, and we said, hey, listen, now we want to kind of reach out to more people. How do we do it, right? Spending on Facebook, Google, newspapers, radios wasn't even an option. We didn't have the money to kind of spend on that, right? So what we did was we said, hey, listen, with Truly Madly, we are in some ways kind of breaking stereotypes, because you're making online dating, online matchmaking acceptable, right? So I'm talking about 2012, right, where online dating wasn't still very cool, right? It was still kind of, there was still stigma attached to it. It wasn't very acceptable, and we said, hey, listen, we're making online dating acceptable. So we're breaking stereotypes. So why don't we do a social campaign where we get people from normal walks of life, to kind of hold a placard in front of their pictures and kind of show some stereotypes they are breaking, right? And so what we did was, like, we went around clicking photos of people and kind of having them put a placard in front of the photos, talking about the stereotype they're breaking. So, you had a guy who said, I love pink and I'm not gay, right? You had a Tam Ram who said, I'm not a vegetarian, right? Very soon this campaign became viral, actually, because people started kind of coming up themselves and putting up their photos on Facebook and Instagram, tagging us, saying that, hey, listen, this is the stereotype I'm breaking, right? Very soon we got almost 7 million impressions. So we reached out to almost 7 million people through this campaign. And this I'm talking about, 2012. We got picked up by pretty much all the top publications, guess how much we spent on this campaign? We spent, total amount of money we spent was 3.5 lakhs. That's all the money we spent. And we got a reach of 7 million users, right? We reached out to 7 million consumers in our TG. And that's where we get our first, and this is how we got our first 50,000 odd consumers or members, right? For Truly Madly, to kind of test out the product on a wider audience. Had we gone about acquiring them through your general kind of your current means, it would have cost us maybe $1 million, $2 million odd dollars, right? Which we just couldn't afford to do at that point of time. So this was one growth hack, right? And we tried a couple of growth hacks. Obviously, what you have to do is try multiple growth hacks. You don't know what is going to work, so we tried multiple ones, and this one actually was the one which kind of really kind of took us from 0 to kind of 1. In kind of then really kind of validating our hypotheses. Growth hack Vital, right? Again, Vital, we started off again the same kind of dilemma, right? So we have an MVP now. Our initial set of consumers love our product. But how do we really kind of reach out to a wider audience, right? And again, no money. So we said, hey, listen, a great place where, startups where there's a high concentration of startups or kind of smaller companies are these co-working centers now, right? And they have, why don't we just kind of tie up with these co-working centers and reach out to all the startups in those co-working centers, right? So we went to OYO workspaces, we went to Office, we went to ABL workspaces, We went to all these workspaces and we tied up with them and said, listen, we'll offer all the companies which are coming and kind of taking co-working space from you, these amazing health benefits. Would you want to kind of offer them? And everyone was willing. They said, this is great, right? Why would we want to offer them? The companies definitely need them. So quickly with just tying up with a couple of co-working centers, we were able to reach out to almost like 60-70,000 odd employees, right? Then we went to all the startups we knew, right? And we said, hey, listen, they don't have any health benefits. Why don't we go to why don't we make a list of all the startups in our network and start kind of pinging them? So we went to LBB, to Poto, Falcon Brick. A lot of these startups we knew, we went to them and we kind of gave them a solution or a product, and cost of acquisition zero, right? Because all it took was kind of meetings with the founders of these startups, or basically the partnership managers at these co-working centers. And quickly we were able to kind of get across our product to a large number of people to figure out are people even using the product? What are the features they're using? What is it that they like? What is it that they don't like? Right? So that's what we did at Vital. So I think the point is that initially in your journey, right, whatever product it is, you will have to figure out ways to reach out to your TG in a very, very cheap way. So that you can at least kind of try out your product on a wider base right now and get to some proof of concept, right? Before you start kind of spending marketing dollars on acquiring consumers. So, now let's say that you figured out a growth hack, you have a channel to kind of reach out to a larger audience. Now, as a founder, right, or as a startup, it is your responsibility to kind of take that feedback and kind of understand, where is it that your product is working, where is it that your product is not working. So I think one thumb rule, which I still do today, which I started from way back in Expedia and still do today, I speak to at least 10 users daily, even today, right? So in Make My Trip, when I was building out the product and Make My Trip, when we started Make My Trip, we were doing, now it's a big company, but again, we're doing probably 100 flight bookings a day, and maybe booking 10 room nights a day, right? That number is probably 1,000x today. But I used to speak to every person who was buying the flight ticket. I used to speak to every person who was kind of even trying to book a hotel room on Make My Trip. Just trying to understand, are they able to kind of understand the user flows? Are they able to kind of figure out how to kind of go about and make that booking? Is there somewhere they're struggling to kind of understand things or kind of move ahead? Why are they not doing that? Why are they not doing this, right? And guess what? There are a lot of assumptions you make when you're building a product, but the real insights you will get when consumers start using it, right? So truly madly, I used to speak to more than 10, but my thumb rule is 10 users every day. You have to speak to at least 10 users every day yourself. Don't leave this to your marketing team or your support team or your product managers or your developers. You have to do it yourself to really understand, where is it that the consumers are facing problems? Where is it that consumers are really liking the experience? And then you double down on that, right? So that is one thing, right? The second thing is that you have to get your analytics and data mining in place from day one. This is one area where I see a lot of startups kind of fail, is that they don't have a way to kind of measure, what is happening on the product, right? So super important to get your analytics and data mining in place from day one, so that you can understand how the user is behaving with your product, right? So speaking to the consumers, there is going to be a lot of qualitative kind of data which is going to come in, but you also need quantitative data, right? And that quantitative data you can only get if you're measuring it. So put in place, some basic analytics, put in place some basic business intelligence tools so that you can see, how kind of consumers are interacting with your product, right? Where is it that they are kind of leaking? Where is it that, they are kind of not maybe moving ahead, right? And what you do then is that you keep plugging all the loopholes, right? And you keep closing all the bugs, and you keep kind of doubling down on features which your consumers are really, really liking, right? And that's what you keep doing, right? And it's an iterative process, and you have to keep doing it. So make sure that all this is done, right? Because it's super important, again, to reach to your PMF. Now, so you've done this, right? So you have a MVP, you have a great product now, you have tried it out with a bunch of people. Now you've gone to a wider audience, and you've tried out your product. You're speaking to consumers, you're kind of closing all the loopholes, you're closing bugs, you're refining the customer experience, you're adding more layers. But then when do you really know that you've got to a product market fit, right? And that's a question I get pretty much from every young startup and a founder, that Rahul, I've gone through this whole exercise, right? And I have a product, I have a 1,000 odd consumers, but when do I really know that I've got product market fit? And to me, there's some indicators of product. And it's not a science, frankly. It's more like an art. And there are a few indicators you will start seeing, which will tell you whether you have hit product market fit or not. And for me, those are basically, you start seeing kind of people converting, right? Automatically. So from people who are coming and kind of seeing your product, kind of visiting your kind of website or app or whatever it is, you see a lot of people kind of going inside the product, trying out the product. Kind of, if your conversions is on, certain purchase, then they're starting to purchase that product, right? If your conversion is on certain engagement, then they started engaging with your product, right? So one is that you start seeing that happening, right? Second is that there'll be low churn. So you're able to retain your consumers for a much longer time, right? You'll see that if you kind of start plotting your cohorts of retention and churn, you'll see that, you're retaining more and more people over a longer period of time, right? You'll see a very high net promoter score. And you suddenly start seeing that your net promoter score, which is like how likely are your current set of consumers going to refer your product to their friends and network and family, right? It's a very, very simple one-line question, actually. And what you start seeing is that more and more people will start kind of referring your product. So you'll see your net promoter score kind of going up, right? And the fourth thing is you're going to start seeing organic growth. And that's because now that people who use your product are happy with what they are kind of getting, and they have started referring it to their network and their friends and family, right? So instead of having to spend on acquiring consumers, now you're going to see kind of consumers starting to come in organically, right? So the moment you start seeing these signals, you see high number of people kind of converting, you see high retention, you see high NPS, you see high organic growth happening. To me, those are signs of that you're getting to a product market fit, right? And that's when you start saying that, hey, listen, now I think I'm getting to product market fit. But guess what? Until then, you have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. You have to build, measure, repeat. And guess what? Sometimes could be the feedback could be really brutal, and your initial assumptions and hypotheses might completely fall flat. In which case, you probably will have to rebuild your product, right? But it's super important that you do that. Those were my learnings, on product market fit, and some kind of insights on how to get to that. Happy to take questions now. And hope you kind of found this interesting. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for very, very engaging discussion on product market fit. And I think you picked up some of the very, very relevant points. The one that echoes to me, is that you're talking to at least 10 customers every day in all your ventures, and I think that's something which you have highlighted so nicely. The need to be close to your customer. Okay, wait, Rahul, I have this. When we talk to students, and very often they come up with this thing that, we need to be fast to the market. We need to rush. We need to be quick. And that, the speed of execution needs to be high and you need to rush to the market. At the same time, you spoke about MVP and testing the MVP and all that. How do you really kind of manage these two things? They seem to be paradoxical. They might appear to be paradoxically to each other, conflicting, rush to market. So how would you kind of handle that?
See again. So I think you have to balance the two. So you want to see your go-to-market and your kind of when you want to hit the market. See, also what you don't want to do is you want to hit the market with a suboptimal product, right? Because then what will start happening is that you get into this vicious cycle where the feedback which starts coming in starts questioning your very, very core hypotheses of why you were building that solution. So my advice or kind of my learning is that again, identify that really, really small core set of features you don't want to compromise on, right? And that's what your MVP is. And then figure out what is the best way or the fastest way then to get to market with that MVP. So like as I gave you an example with Vital, right? We identified a core set of features. And now it's like, hey, now we want to get to market quickly, right? And then we had to balance trade-off, right? So like if we started building the MVP with native apps, it would have taken us 6 months, right? We said, hey, let's not do that. Let's just do a website, right? A web app, which will take us 2 months, right? But we were very clear that we will go to market only once we have these basic set of features. Without this, we're not even going to hit the market, right? But then you have to be smart, right? And you have to figure out, now that you have this core set of features, how can you kind of develop them quickly, right? Without kind of, spending too much time. I think that's what you have to balance the two off. And see that, how can you quickly kind of get to market with those core set of features.
Great, thanks. I'll take some questions now. Students have been writing in the question answer tab. There's one gentleman called Devashish Nayak. He's saying, how can Vital attract customers faster? Because apps like Policy Bazaar are very, very competitive. How are you going to compete with people likes of Policy Bazaar and get customers?
Right. So again, so Policy Bazaar is an aggregator. They are offering basically insurance products from pretty much the insurance products you get in the market from any regular insurer. At Vital, what we're doing is we are actually building insurance products from ground up with an insurer, which are very, very differentiated than what that insurer offers in retail. So one is that our product itself is differentiated. So we are not an aggregator. We are a full stack platform, and so obviously, the way we are looking at kind of reaching out to members is again through these small companies and by going to individuals directly. And for doing that, again, we are working with kind of partnerships. We are working with people who are already catering to that segment. Right. So to give you an example, we are working with this platform called Daily Hunt, which is basically a content aggregator. They get almost 80 million searches on health-related topics, right? So we're trying to kind of offer them, trying to offer all their members who are coming on Daily Hunt the option to kind of review and explore Vital. 1mg, it's an online pharmacy. So we are trying to kind of do a tie-up with them and say that, hey, listen, anyone who's coming on 1mg to buy pharmacy or medicines, why can't, they get the health benefits? Why can't they explore or get health benefits from Vital? To reach out to smaller companies, again, going back to our growth hacks, what are some solution providers who already cater to that segment, right? And, if you look at a lot of these neo banking platforms, which cater to these small companies like Bank Open, Razor Pay. So we are piggybacking on them. We're tying up with them and saying, hey, listen, you're already providing a financial solution to a small company. Health benefits is a big part of that solution pack, actually. So why don't you offer this also? So again, kind of figuring out different kind of channels we can work with, partner with to reach out to the kind of the audience we want to reach out to. And the reason we're able to do that is because our product is differentiated, right? It's not the same run-of-the-mill product which one can get through an insurer or through Policy Bazaar. We are building a full stack.
I think that's the key thing, having a very, very innovative product. And that is the reason why you also need to have an MVP. I mean, if you're doing something which others have done, you really don't need to test it out. You just find a bit of.
Absolutely.
But then if
Absolutely.
you really have to be an entrepreneur, that's a very, very underpinning of the thing. You have to have an innovative product. Shaurya is wanting to know, is there a role for technological tools or AI tools in startup, in starting online startups like Vital or Truly Madly or others? Do you see a role for AI in such kind of startups?
So, very, very good question. And I think, AI, machine learning, data mining, all these are like great things. And by the way, I've done my thesis in machine learning way back in 2000. I did my master's in it.
Wow.
It wasn't even, but it was even not a kind of term everyone could understand.
True.
But here's the fact, right? As a startup, when you're trying out something, unless it's a core kind of AI machine learning product where I understand, right, that you need to have those layers built in. But let's say Truly Madly, right? So for AI machine learning or any data mining model to work, you need large amounts of data, right? Without kind of training those models on that big, large data set, those models are not going to work. And as a startup, you're really not going to have that much data, right? So what do you do with, so you might have the best AI kind of tool, but if you can't train that tool, what's the use of that tool, right? So I think as a startup, you first have to be smart enough to kind of get that data, right? And until you get that data, you have to do some very basic stuff. So in Truly Madly, what we did was, the matching was very, very basic. Basically, I could write that model on an Excel. It was so simple, right? But then when we started kind of acquiring users and we reached million odd users, then that Excel doesn't perform, it doesn't work, right? And that's when you start kind of putting in all those different AI models in place. Because now those AI models will start predicting with some certain accuracy, which is going to be reasonable. So again, to your question, I think initially when you're starting, you don't have that much data. Use simple kind of models, simple rules. To kind of make things happen. Then over time, once you start getting data, and you'll get to know, that your basic simple rules are now breaking, right? At that point, I think you kind of start thinking about AI, machine learning, data mining, and all that stuff.
Right. Okay. There's a question on a couple of questions. Both of them, I think, are similar. They're saying, how do you get high conversion and how do you get customers to become loyal to yourself? Is it based on trust or is it something else?
I think that is the basic core of your product, right? So they have to really like what you're offering. Again, one of the thumb rules is that your experience or your product has to be 10x better for them to stick around with you or to change their behavior, right, from what is existing out there in the market. So, I think that's the core, right? So why would consumers come to you? One, right? They would come to you because you have a solution or you have a product which is differentiated, which is innovative, or which is kind of solving a problem which is not being solved, right? So you have consumers coming, but then it all depends on, the experience, the quality of your product, the solution. Are you really kind of solving those pain points which the consumers are coming in for? So I think that's a very core product, right? That's what's going to kind of really tell you whether people are sticking or not.
Yeah. There's something about the reviews, product reviews online, and somebody is saying, nowadays there are many fake reviews than apart from the genuine reviews. Now, how does the company tackle that? Or let's say, how does one as a startup tackle that? Because a large company could possibly hire many people to put up good reviews, whereas that kind of money won't be available to a startup.
Absolutely right. So see, and by the very kind of nature of us, right, humans, right, if we like something, we won't kind of shout about it, right? If we really like something, we'll probably talk to our friends about it. But if we don't like something, we really want to shout out, right, and say that, hey, listen, this thing sucks, right? We really kind of love trolling. We love kind of, putting things down. So what will happen is that what you're saying is absolutely right, that, all the negative reviews will start coming in, right? They will come in much faster compared to your positive reviews. For every one positive review, you're going to have at least 100 or negative reviews. That is not the actual kind of sign of where your product is going. I think the negative reviews are very important, right? Because they kind of help you kind of think through your product. But don't take that as the actual kind of perception of a product. That's why you have to speak to at least 10 actual users every day to get their feedback, right? And understand how many of those are liking your product and not liking your product. If guess what? If 9 of those 10 don't like your product, then there is a problem, right? But if let's say 9 out of 10 like your product and one is not liking your product, and the reviews are saying that, hey, listen, 90% of your people are putting up the reviews are negative reviews, then right, there's a mismatch. So I think what you should do is that, and that's a problem that, you'll start getting negative reviews faster than positive reviews. But again, that's why I speak to 10 users at least every day to get more qualitative data on how those users are liking your product or
not. Right. And you're very right. I mean, the qualitative data at times is actually a much more important than just getting percentages or NPS.
Right.
Now there is it seems that AI has a lot of attention right now. So the one concern that people are thinking about is that does AI reduce manpower? Or can AI totally replace human interference or interface? And things like, can AI be used how do you ensure customers trust in the product? Whereas there could be AI being used. How do you build trust? So all these are some of the area that the students are asking right now. What do you think? Since you've been very close to digital startups.
Again, right? I think they are the buzzwords. People are kind of carried away by them and whatnot. But let's kind of really understand. As a startup, again. So I'll take Make My Trip. I'll take Truly Madly. Make My Trip. We had like maybe 100 odd bookings every day coming in 2007, 2008. Do I really need AI to kind of support that consumer base or kind of recommend them anything? Not really, right? We just had simple rules. We had a small kind of customer support team of 5 members who was kind of taking all the calls, kind of answering them. Now, obviously, let's say now you started doing 1 million bookings every day, right? Your support center can't support 1 million odd bookings every day. There's no way, right? You want to start recommending them other options, right? Now your simple rules can't work because you have consumers who have different behaviors, who have different requirements, So that's where now your AI starts coming in, right? So now you kind of build a recommendation engine, which can take in maybe thousands of odd parameters to kind of put in a recommendation, right? You build in an AI customer servicing bot, right? You build a customer bot with AI, which now has been trained on all the questions which consumers had been asking you, right? And now can kind of answer it automatically, right? But see, all that happens once you reach a certain scale, right? Without that, you have to figure out, without investing in all this, can I just kind of have a very simple rule, and can I have just kind of 2 or 3 people kind of manning calls to really understand, what kind of questions are coming, or what kind of what is it that people are wanting, right? Initially, you don't even know that. So in Truly Madly, right? Initially, we had what we call relationship advisors, right? Where all our members would get a relationship advisor, and in case there was a problem, they could just kind of call or chat with them. But when we scaled to 1 million odd users, we couldn't scale relationship advisors, right? Then we built something called a Miss TM, Miss Truly Madly, which was a AI bot, right, for taking in basic questions and basic concerns, which we trained her on based on all those large set of questions we had got, right? So, I think there's a place for AI. I think there is a place for different kind of recommendation models, but only after you've reached a certain scale.
Right. Yeah, I think what you're saying is keep it simple and workable initially before you go
Absolutely.
on to, don't chase AI for the sake of AI, for the sake of showing it. When it's relevant, then only go for it.
Absolutely right.
All right, we're coming close to we're just a minute over the thing. I'll take the last question and then we'll wrap up. So there's Samir Khan was asking, if you're coming up with some startup plan and not having enough funds, so are there any company or government organization which sponsors startup businesses?
Sorry, are there any?
Are there any government organizations or companies which sponsor or provide funds to startup businesses?
Right. I think there are a lot of. I think, and again, when we were doing Make My Trip, compared to today, I think the ecosystem has changed so much. Now you have, so many venture funds. You have seed funds. You have angel investors. You have incubators. Uh, Frankly, when I came back to India in 2006, there was nothing. There was only probably one or two kind of venture funds who were also kind of exploring, trying out India, and you're lucky enough to raise some money from them. But now I think if you look around, I think the whole Indian startup ecosystem is kind of blooming, right? You have all kinds of investors and government subsidies and incubators, and angel investors and whatnot.
Right. So we have come to the end of this webinar. Thank you, Rahul, so much. We really appreciate your taking time out and sharing your views and some very, very practical and very relevant inputs available to all those who are looking at becoming an entrepreneur. And I also thank all the attendees who came onto this webinar. And thanks once again. And once more, please stay safe and take all the precautions required during these challenging times. Till we meet again, have a great time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day. Bye.